Last month, Victor Martinez was sentenced to prison for welfare fraud, while the family he once controlled shattered into truth-tellers and survivors. My parents had treated my existence as a utility, raising siblings, forfeiting dreams, and carrying their burdens as if I owed them. When I tried to escape for college, they turned the law against me, but the system they weaponized unraveled them. Now I'm finally free. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. As a child, I changed diapers and cooked dinner while my parents praised themselves at church. I thought obedience earned love. My mother handed me a cleaning roster at age 13. Initials scribbled like commands. My father canceled my music class without a word. That night, I cried into homework, erasing hope. My sister Sarah whispered, "One day, we'll run." But even her voice sounded trapped like mine. Our silence became currency for survival. At 15, I missed school to babysit while my mom recovered from exhaustion, really a shopping binge. My father docked my allowance, calling it family contribution. I cleaned molded dishes while classmates celebrated prom. That night, Sarah gave me a handmade bracelet. "You're more than this," she whispered. I nodded but didn't believe it. Graham Helen clapped when I served dinner, then warned, "Keep your head down." Girl, that bracelet became my anchor in storms. When I applied to college, my parents called it betrayal. My mother slammed the acceptance letter onto the counter, face twisted with rage. "Who'll raise the babies?" she shrieked. My father accused me of abandoning them. That night, Sarah recorded their outburst on her phone. I locked myself in the bathroom, tears soaking my hoodie. The bracelet Sarah made pressed into my wrist, a silent vow. I wasn't their servant, I was their daughter. That mattered. A week later, my FAFSA mysteriously vanished. The college said the forms were incomplete. I'd submitted everything. Derek, my cousin, I couldn't find the file. Suspicious. Miss Johnson from Kespies visited after an anonymous tip. My mother cried on cue, Oscar-worthy, but Sarah quietly passed her a flash drive under the table. That night, I whispered, "We're not crazy." Sarah nodded, eyes red. The house buzzed with fake calm, but I knew the walls were cracking. Victor faked my signature on tax returns. A refund came in my name. I never saw a cent. When I confronted him, he laughed. "You're part of the household, be grateful." Sarah muttered, "This isn't normal." Miss Johnson called again, this time firmer. Mom baked cookies, played matriarch, but Kespias scheduled interviews. I found my bracelet under my pillow, Sarah's reminder. I wasn't imagining things. My future wasn't theirs to profit from. The fight had started and my phone vanished. Sarah found it hidden in Dad's locked drawer. Text to college advisors gone. Victor claimed I misplaced it. I screamed, he smirked. That night, I slept with the bracelet tied to my wrist. Grandma warned me again, "Obedient girls stay safe." Sarah stared at her, jaw tight. Kespias returned for separate interviews. My voice shook, but I spoke. "They lie, they steal." It felt like vomiting fire. Truth burns but also clears. I wasn't backing down. Miss Johnson called me brave. That night, Mom locked me out for attitude. I sat on the porch wrapped in a sheet, teeth chattering as Sarah slid snacks in her hoodie through the mail slot. I wanted to scream, to break windows. Instead, I etched freedom into my notebook. Kespias escalated the case. The bracelet glowed under the porch light, its thread worn but strong like us. If this was war, I was ready to fight back. In court, I wore the bracelet like armor. Victor barked about family duty. Danielle wept on cue. But Miss Johnson presented bank records my name. Their fraud. Derek tried to deny the forged files, but tech forensics crushed his lie. Grandma muttered prayers, but the judge wasn't moved. Sarah testified next. Her voice clear, steady. She saved us. The courtroom held its breath. I exhaled years of fear in one shaky sigh. Finally, the spotlight was justice. Daniela screamed when they played Sarah's recordings. "Lies," she shouted, but her voice cracked. The judge's gavel echoed. Kespias handed over my college files doctored by Derek. He sank in his seat. "I didn't know," he whispered. But no one listened. Victor shook his head, disbelief clinging like sweat. Sarah squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. The bracelet between us pulsed like a heartbeat. We weren't alone anymore. For the first time, truth had volume. Grandma tried to testify. They exaggerate, but stumbled over her stories. The judge asked for evidence. She had none. Her silence when I was locked out, when I missed school, why I begged for mercy now. That silence screamed guilt. Miss Johnson showed letters from teachers' absences, missed assignments, suspicious excuses. I looked at Grandma. You knew. She looked away. That courtroom wasn't just for justice, it was our resurrection. I felt something break and something else bloom. It was hope. Victor's lawyer pleaded for leniency. He's a father. The judge leaned forward. A father who exploited his child. Silence followed. Daniela sobbed dramatically, but the courtroom was unmoved. When the verdict was read guilty on all counts, I didn't cry. I stood taller. Sarah grabbed my hand. The bracelet, once dulled by grief, gleamed. Kespias granted me educational guardianship. My college reoffered my scholarship. The judge nodded at me. "You're no victim. You're a survivor." I finally believed it. After court, I walked out into sunlight that didn't feel borrowed. Reporters shouted questions. I kept walking. Sarah hugged me tight. "We did it," she whispered. "At home, we packed quietly." Grandma begged us to stay. I paused, bracelet between my fingers. "I'm done being useful. I'm ready to live." The car door closed like punctuation on a sentence I didn't write. We didn't just win, we rewrote the rules. This was an escape, it was reclamation. Just when peace seemed possible, a letter arrived. My parents were appealing. Victor claimed misrepresentation. Daniela demanded custody of the younger kids. I froze. Sarah nearly shattered the plate in her hand. No more." We contacted Miss Johnson. She assured us, the evidence is solid, that the court date was set. I pulled the bracelet from my drawer. If they wanted a fight, they forgot we were trained by fire. We were ready again. The appeal hearing revealed a forged therapist letter dated after the court ruling. Derek had tampered again. Kespias launched a digital audit. He cracked. They threatened to cut me off, he confessed. Sarah's jaw clenched, but she didn't speak. The judge tossed out the appeal. Daniela collapsed in her chair. Victor stared daggers. We walked out, not triumphant, but steady. That kind of fury couldn't touch us anymore. Their lies had nowhere left to hide. That night, we found a note on our doorstep. "Blood is thicker. No signature." Sarah stiffened. "Grandma," I whispered. I called Miss Johnson. Security cameras were installed. Police opened a harassment case. Grandma claimed innocence, but her church friends started whispering. Community support shifted. A local women's shelter sent gift cards and notes. We believe you. For the first time, our story wasn't buried. It stood tall. Caper clipped and spotlighted. We weren't afraid anymore. Grandma sued for visitation, claimed emotional distress. The courtroom smelled like manipulation. Sarah testified soft but sharp. She watched them hurt us. I showed text photos, call logs. The judge denied her. No contact, he ruled. Grandma glared as we left, but her power drained with each step. I didn't smile. I exhaled. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet. Final. The bracelet itched under my sleeve like a warning turn reminder. We were safe. That was enough in therapy. Gabriel the toddler said, Mommy's mean. Dr. Williams recorded it. Eyes soft but steady. Kespia's expanded investigation to the younger kids' welfare. Daniela's lawyer dropped her. Victor's parole got denied. Gabriel clung to me after each session. You make spaghetti. He smiled. Those words landed heavier than any accusation. We weren't just survivors. We were anchors now. Sarah tucked Gabriel in with lullabies. Our story twisted but always toward truth. The system finally listened. Daniela attempted one last move, an interview with a tabloid. She painted us as liars, but the outlet cross-checked facts. Instead, they published and exposed the daughters who fought back. It went viral. Comments flooded in support, outrage, validation. I held the bracelet as Sarah read one aloud. You made me feel seen. We weren't hiding anymore. Our names weren't stains. They were stories. Stories that mattered. This wasn't shame, it was survival made visible. Weeks later, the college hosted a panel breaking cycles. They invited me to speak. I hesitated, but Sarah whispered. You lived it, own it. On stage, bracelet snug on my wrist, I shared our journey. Faces in the crowd wept, nodded, clapped. Afterwards, a girl hugged me. You saved me. I couldn't breathe for a second. Then I smiled. This pain, it had purpose now. We weren't just healing. We were lighting paths for others. At the panel's end, Dr. Williams approached. You're not just surviving, you're redefining family. She offered to write a recommendation letter. Sarah beamed. I blinked back tears. That night, we lit candles on the apartment balcony. Gabriel danced in pajamas free. Our phone buzzed. Another feature request from a nonprofit. We weren't objects of pity. We were architects of change. The bracelet now hung on our wall, not as armor but as memory. This chapter was ours. Victor wrote a letter from prison. Full of blame and guilt trips. You destroyed the family, he wrote. I didn't respond. Sarah read it aloud once, then shredded it. He doesn't define us anymore. The bracelet shimmered in the trash light as pieces of the letter fell. We made hot cocoa, watched cartoons with Gabriel, and laughed at that night. No ghosts haunted us, just blankets, comfort, and silence that didn't sting. Some truths need no reply. Sarah received an invitation to a youth leadership camp. All expenses covered. She froze. Do I deserve this? I hugged her more than anyone. The camp helped her find voice, confidence. She returned with journals full of poems, one titled, Unbroken Thread. I cried reading it. We framed the title page beside the bracelet. Our wounds didn't vanish, but they shaped strength. We weren't victims of history, we were authors of a future we chose. One evening, Gabriel asked, was Grandma mean to you too? My chest tightened. She didn't protect us, I said. He nodded slowly, then offered his teddy bear. You're safe now. That moment, so small, so huge, broke something open. Dr. Williams said healing came in echoes. That night, I didn't cry. I wrote. As Sarah read over my shoulder. You're telling our story. I nodded. This wasn't just memory, it was evidence. Of pain, yes, but also of power. A podcast invited us to speak. I hesitated, but Sarah said, if even one girl hears us, it's worth it. We shared our truth, paraphernalia, manipulation, survival. Messages poured in. That was my life. You gave me courage. The host mailed us thank you mugs, cycle breakers. We toasted with cocoa. The bracelet lay beside the mic during recording. It wasn't decoration, it was our proof of where we'd been, of why we'd never go back. Daniela sent a birthday card to Gabriel. No return address, just glitter and guilt. Miss you lots. Sarah stared at it. Burn it, I asked. She shook her head. It shredded. Recycle the lie. We did. Gabriel watched us calmly, then said, I like your cake better. We baked cupcakes, danced in pajamas, played flashlight tag. That night, Sarah hung a new sign by the door. Love lives here. Guilt. Turn away. The cycle stayed broken. Grandma moved out of town quietly. No goodbye. We heard from a neighbor. Her house was sold. She lost her audience. Sarah quipped. I didn't celebrate, just exhaled. One less shadow. We bought a new rug. Painted the hallway. Sarah chose lavender. It smells like peace, she smiled. The bracelet got its own shadow box. Center shelf. Our apartment didn't just feel safe, it felt earned. Every laugh echoed differently now, not haunted, just full. At community college, I joined a support group, formerly parentified daughters. I said it aloud. No shame. Women nodded. One cried. I shared Sarah's poem, our court win, our Kespia's files. One girl whispered, you just described my life. I gave her my email. You're not alone. Afterward, Sarah met me with hot chocolate. Still scared, I smiled. Yeah, but I'm also sure. That night, I framed our group photo. My face finally looked whole. A letter from the state arrived. Gabriel's legal guardianship was now officially mine. I read it 3 times. Sarah screamed, hugging me. We did it. We danced in the kitchen. Offbeat and loud. That paper changed nothing but also everything. Gabriel colored a picture, me, him, Sarah, in our apartment. Above it, he wrote home. I tacked it to the fridge beside the court order. The cycle ended, but our family, our real one, had just begun. On Gabriel's first day of preschool, he clutched my hand. You'll come back, I knelt. Always. Sarah snapped a photo, his tiny backpack, our intertwined fingers. Later, I hung it beside the bracelet. Not all beginnings feel safe, but this one did. He waved from the door. I cried happy tears this time. We didn't just survive. We rebuilt, day by day, step by step, love by love, and nothing, not legacy, lies, or blood couldn't do that. Looking back, survival wasn't the finish line. Rebuilding trust was. Sarah and I shifted from silent soldiers to sisters in truth. Our dinners, our laughter. Our new rules, they weren't borrowed, they were built. The bracelet now rests in glass, not on my wrist. A reminder, not a shield. Gabriel's bedtime hugs mean more than any courtroom win. We didn't just break cycles, we planted new ones, the kind that grow. Stretch, bloom. We chose peace and kept choosing it. Some nights, I still flinch at sudden sounds, trauma doesn't vanish, but it softens. Gabriel's giggles fill the silence where shame used to live. Sarah reads her poems at open mics, I speak at panels, we turned our pain into purpose. That bracelet frayed to faded now frames every speech I give, not as a wound but a witness, of the girl I was, of the woman I've become. We weren't rescued, we rose and we keep rising. Now our apartment holds more than furniture, it holds freedom. Caspia's checks turned into friendly visits. My college advisor calls me unstoppable. Victor and Danielle remain incarcerated. Their names don't echo here. Gabriel thrives, Sarah blossoms, the bracelet stays near the door, a quiet sentinel. We don't fear footsteps anymore. We greet them with light, with choice. With love we're home. Someday, I'll tell Gabriel everything, not to burden him but to show him what breaking chains looks like. He'll grow knowing love doesn't demand silence, that family isn't built on fear, and when he asks about the bracelet in the box, I'll smile, that was our battle thread. I'll say, and we used it to stitch a better world. Thanks for watching, hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.